Thank you. All right. So the financial statements, Shantae's been on vacation. She just came back today. And I've been in union negotiations the last 4 working days, so they weren't quite ready. We should have them done by the end of this week. We're almost there, but still need to wrap up a few things. Oh, she's logging on right now. So the good news is we did have time to meet with Troon, the golf course people, and get kind of an update on where they were at. They actually rolled the May and June financials together, and we had a meeting with them last week to go over the balance sheet and the profit and loss statement. And I'm going to let Mayor kind of talk about, we have Rich on here as kind of co-presenting, and I'll let Mayor talk about how that came about.
So we had a productive meeting with Troon. We have a couple things, and Rich probably can go in more detail with it, but Troon is having a little bit of difficulty on their reporting part because it's the new reporting structure that they have. So this is we're the first city, and this is where they're going to be moving forward to. So there's some items on here that we've requested. And you'll see, like, if you look at the first page, inventory, we think that that's an important piece for them to keep track of, just so we can monitor, we have shrinkage or items like that. As far as going through the detail, that the first month's actually 2 months results have actually been very positive of where we are. We are slightly behind on actually rounds played, as well as we are slightly down on revenue, and mainly that has to do with the lack of alcohol, and not because we don't have a license. We're still working through, and I can tell you that getting a liquor license is not the easiest thing to do, but we're in the process of it. Although we did use a banquet permit in order to do the golf tournament that we had to get that done. And I think that what is going to be important for everyone to look at is that we really, as a city, didn't generate really any revenue when Kurt was running the golf course in the past 8 years, 10 years or so. So far we're showing as a positive. In fact, I know I saw an email setting up the account to transfer money back into the city from the first month's in there. So if you want to scroll down to the page, it actually shows our bottom line. So so the gross operating profit, 44,844. That's and then if you go further down, I think. So net income, 26,567 is what we showed for the first two months. Now, there are a couple things that I just got to get I shouldn't say the city just needs to get their handle around on the labor part of it, because it's a higher labor percent than I was anticipating. But again, I've never run a golf course before, and the numbers actually are probably lying in what an average golf course does with that. But first month's results look pretty solid, considering we don't have liquor sales with it. And, at least we're off to a start, and that's the 26,000 is obviously much better than what we ever generated with Kurt. So Rich, I know you had a lot of questions.
Yeah, sitting there trying to scroll it up. It doesn't need to be scrolled up. So there's no question. My free market opinion was that we should always have the inventory listed so that we can take inventories once a year, make sure that we're on top of the age of our inventory and on top of the shrinkage that just unfortunately happens to occur. And at least we'll be aware of it instead of all of a sudden we go, oh my God, how did we lose $50,000 worth of inventory over the last 4 years? This is something we got to keep on top of, and they need to help us with that. There's a line on the sales part that talks about, let me try to find it. It's part of the sales figures. And it's one of the sales figures is lumped into just one heading. And the heading is slightly confusing to me. I think it's called card holder.
Yes.
And can one of you other three remind me of the different items that were under card holder? Because I did not write the note down. All I wrote was that I would like to have card holder broken into more than just that word. Maybe I wrote the word breakout, so maybe there were three bullet points instead of just the one that says card holder.
Yeah, the card holder is people that have a annual membership. So you have rounds played, but there is no money that is tracked for that, because that goes into a different account. So it's kind of I can't remember exactly where they put that in there. So there's that. There's also if someone has a gift card, it would go into there, and I can't think of what that third one was.
Yeah, so there were three things under that one heading at least. And I said, council's gonna wanna not have to ask you the question every third month because we forget what's in there. Just break it out.
The third one was the cross promotions, like if you do with a you did a package deal.
Okay. So other than that, it's really straightforward. Yeah, for them to be so close to their forecast is incredible, especially considering no liquor sales. And you know, I really don't have anything negative to say other than nitpicking, so that future councils will be able to look at this and probably not even have a question if they read the statements closely.
Yeah. So what I understand from here is that going on that balance sheet, the first page, what we expect to happen now per our agreement is that current net income amount, the 26,494, they're going to put that in our bank account. And then what happens with that from there is that goes into our golf course fund to sit in the fund balance and fund future capital projects, fund future deficits if there's deficits in any month. Basically, we have to maintain that $50,000 members equity, which is what the city put in up front. And anything above that, we get back, and anything below that, we have to actually move back into that account. So the good news is for May and June, we're going to see about 26,500 put in our bank account, and it'll go directly into Golf Course Fund 102 once we do the financials for July.
So please tell me again what those three card designations were. I couldn't write it down fast enough.
Go ahead.
You know, Richard, I'm speaking from lack of memory, so I'm not going to be able to give you those three items. I've asked them to break it down.
Okay.
Yes, I asked them to break it down, and then the Troon finance person said, can you please send me an email? And I did that yesterday, so apologies. And I should have taken better notes, but it was kind of a last minute thing that I asked, and I didn't do a good job with the three categories or four categories, whatever it was.
No apologies necessary.
Richard, what you just need to think about, people go on and they'll play for free because they paid it elsewhere. So it would be like an annual fee. So you don't pay every time that you go on, you just pay it up front. So you just pay one chunk amount. It could be a gift card that someone gave and used it to play around. It could be a cross promotion that we utilize on with a hotel that you buy this package, and then it gives you hot dogs and all that type of stuff. So it's not accounting for a greens fee. So if you go and actually look, there's a line that says 18 holes. And that is someone that actually came to the golf course, paid for that round. The other ones, they have paid for the rounds, but they paid it in a different way.
Got it. Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say that all in all, like, I think both sides were really happy with how, where we're at right now. I learned a lot, like, they put a bunch of money up front into like fertilizer. That was one thing I learned from meeting with them, because we needed to fertilize and water and do all that. So it's gonna take a while, to get a real good rhythm. They expect the financials to be out by the 20th of the following month. So kind of the plan would be, again, bring them to finance committee. We do have Rich sitting in our meetings with Troon, because he's a business expert and can ask all those questions that, coming from a profit and loss perspective, I don't really understand. So it's helpful to have him on there, and he'll kind of act as kind of our council liaison for the golf course stuff. So.
Are you at a point where we can give this to the council members to see what's protocol?
Well, it'll be published with the finance committee stuff that goes online. So it'll be available. We can talk about it at Monday's council meeting on the 24th.
I just don't think the finance members actually got this yet, though, other than what we're seeing in.
Yeah, it'll be posted after we're done here. So it'll be available for the public to see too.
So I have a couple questions.
Yep.
If I may. You mentioned this committee that Rich is on, and you also mentioned that you've learned quite a bit from Troon regarding how they do their finances. I'm wondering if it would be, I don't know what the plan is for bringing council up to speed on all of this. I suspect that if it's just an item on the agenda on Monday night, it's not going to be sufficient for us to learn what we need to learn. So I know you guys hate it, but maybe we need a work study session on this at least once to learn how these finances are going to be moved into our financial system, as well as what they mean, things like the card business and all of that. I don't think that's a 5 or 10 or 15-minute conversation. So I think that we'd be well to plan on an extended period of time for all council be brought up to speed now that we do have the financials. And I appreciate being able to look at them now, and I'd like a little tutorial on exactly what they're talking about. Kind of like, are these meetings that Rich you're having with Troon, are they available to the public to view? Is another question I have.
So I can speak to that. I think the combination of myself, Angie, and Rich can present at the next council meeting as a recap to the finance. Rich was in there because typically what it will be is the Troon reporting to the mayor as far as it. I figured I would have Rich represent the council so he could explain from a business point of view of the numbers that we're looking through. So to have it, I don't believe that we're going to have a open meeting to meet with everything that we do with Troon on every decision that Troon makes. But I think that it's important for us to recap where we are from the financial point of view, and we can definitely do that. And if you would like to have Troon come to the council meeting and present, we can also do that too.
I just think it would be helpful for everybody, at least the first time out, to have a more robust explanation of basically a new financial system that we're going to be looking at, just for purposes of transparency.
I can certainly see how, if we have this out to council, it's pretty simple that we would all make notes on it like I did, have our questions. I can see this being, 30 minutes or less at council because of the simplicity of it. And, but that's really up to agenda setting and the staff and the mayor on how we would do it. But this isn't going to be a scary long process, but I would certainly expect people to have questions.
Right.
Any other questions before we move on? It looks like the chief is back. That must be a good sign.
Yeah,
Good.
it was close, very
Okay.
close.
Let's get a little nervous. All right, well then I think we're ready to move on to the fire presentation.
All right, so we were approved by the council and the mayor to hire 2 in 2023 and 2 in 2024. And so we also lost 2 members, one to another department and one probation didn't work out and he moved on. But what my goal is to bring on all 6 at once. So those 2 that were allotted for 2024, I'd like to bring them on now, and kind of do my Chief Mandela and Angie have been working really hard on the numbers and the financials, but basically because we've delayed the hiring for so long this year, we have the money to make up for bringing on those 2 early. And the benefit of bringing those 2 on early is 6 people all at once, get them their gear all at once, get them everything all at once. And we're going to onboard them for 3 weeks. It's not necessarily a fire academy, but there are certain things that we do here and certain ways that we operate that's kind of different just because we're so far out. So it's a 3-week onboarding process, and it just makes it a lot easier for us to bring everybody all together all at once rather than do it now and then do it again in January for the other 2. So kind of to explain the numbers part of it, I'll turn it over to Assistant Chief Mandela and Angie.
All right, can we go to the next slide? We'll give you the bottom line right up front. If we do as we're suggesting, we'll probably have a savings shown of about $60,000. And that's due to the fact that we had delayed, as the fire chief just stated, the hiring of the 4 individuals with a total of about 19 months of salaries not paid to others. So that's in the bank, so to speak. If you look at those costs broken down on the first 2 bullet points, the actual cost of hiring the extra folks now would only be $49,000. Those are unencumbered numbers or unburdened, i.e. that's the straight salary without any benefits. The benefits are about 30%. If there are no questions on that slide, we can move on to the next. The way it breaks down from the 2 folks that the chief referenced that were here but left, they left very early in the year. That put about $150,000 away for us. We were also authorized to hire the additional 2 from prior council authorization. We were not able to do that in a timely manner because the hiring pool was very tight. We didn't have enough qualified applicants, but we did get quite a number this go around. And we finally have an eligibility list that was certified by the civil service folks. That money is another $114,000 put in the bank for a combined total of about $260,000 that's in the bank or in our budget in the salary line as unspent. If there's no questions there, we can go to the next one. So what would it actually cost to hire those 2 firefighters now? We'll be hiring the 2 firefighters at a step 1 firefighter EMT. They're actually budgeted as a step 1 paramedic. So there's also a difference there, which is in our benefit. We're estimating it costs about $49,000 to bring them on as they stated before. And that's that cost. If we go to the next slide, it breaks it down. We've got the money that's quote unquote saved versus cost. And you can look at the numbers here when you come down to the total line, about 6 lines down. There's your 264 against 120. So we're saving 145. Overtime costs, however, need to be contributed here. So it cost us some money because we didn't hire. And if we look through our records, and we did, back to last February, we found about 384 hours of overtime that was necessary to cover those vacancies for about $23,000 cost. And there's no scientific way to actually get at the overtime cost that you contribute to being short-staffed, but is also caused by sick leave. So I took half of the sick leave overtime for that period, and that's about $11,000, and that's a generous give. And then if we hire those two now for 4 months, that's $49,000. So if you look at the what I call savings minus costs, you got an overall savings of about $62,500.
Hey, Chief, can I interject? We're going to have a lot of people watching this video. We're not saving the city money. We are spending less than the budgeted amount that we allocated.
Correct.
So I just
Correct.
want for clarification.
Yeah,
that,
yeah, you are
you know,
correct.
we're not saving money, but this is coming in under budget that we
Right.
already gave you guys.
Yes, yes, Rich, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, you are correct.
That's a great point.
You might want to put, instead of saved, unspent.
Or
Just as a
something like,
semantic thing, as
Yeah.
Rich
Okay,
mentioned,
Unspent and under-
funds.
or under budget funds, something that,
Yeah,
yes, savings is not. a
under
good word.
budget sounds good.
Got it. Excuse me. If we're ready to go to the next slide and let the other question. To be totally upfront about everything, we want to be sure that everybody's aware that there are additional costs, but those costs will follow any FTE, whether you hire them now, next year, next month, you hire 1 or you hire 10. These are fixed costs all the time. With this new 3-week orientation, because people don't live here in Ocean Shores, unfortunately, they live in other places. We will likely be on the hook for lodging and meal per diem during that 3-week period. We also need to buy bunker gear and other protective clothing, portable radios, uniforms, and then they will finish their orientation period, but they still need to ride along on a certain number of calls, particularly when they're paramedics, so they get quote unquote certified. And that's because the protocols are different, whether you come from King County or Pierce County and come to our county. Each of those controlling doctors under whose license we all work by each county, they are different standing protocols. So we have to make sure that we take our new EMTs and medics out in the field and give them enough experience with calls observed by other EMTs and paramedics to do things such as intubation, start IV lines, all those kind of things, and then learn how to administer drugs that are not necessarily carried in King or Pierce County, but they are carried here in our county. And that's to the benefit of all of our people that live here, all the citizens in this county. Because one of those reasons are because the hospitals are so far away and the staffing is not quite the same in Grays Harbor County as it is in King and Pierce and Snohomish counties. They're able to throw 15 people on a call. We're able to throw 2 to 4. We can't rely on mutual aid from District 7 and other places. So we are, as the fire chief likes to say, we are living in a medical desert. So this is very critical too. So the next slide shows, I think, a breakdown of the bottom lines. No,
So-
so those are the actual costs.
So Chief, my very quick question, I assume that you guys have a protocol handbook that covers virtually every scenario that a paramedic is likely to encounter. And part of their training is to study and become very, very, very familiar with that protocol handbook. Is that correct?
Yes, it's correct. Reading it in a book is one thing, and practicing in the field in the middle of the night and pouring down rain is a whole nother situation. And although there are many scenarios in a handbook or documents that we could give our folks time to read and study and be tested upon, it can't cover every possible and potential scenario. It takes a while. It takes, my personal opinion from what I've seen is it takes about 5 years for the average firefighter / EMT / paramedic to actually master their field. And that's because of the type of calls we go on, the number of calls that we go on, and the varying scenarios that we see, because every call is different. You can go to a 1,200 square foot Rambler type of house with a family of 4 and a pet, and have a room and contents fire. And you can have the exact same house a couple of blocks away and have the same style of fire, and it will be a different fire. Because we're dependent on environmental conditions, we're dependent upon time of response, we're dependent on so many variable factors that we have no control of. We actually have to train our folks to a higher standard, I would believe, than the county requires.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions as well, please.
Sure.
You talk about a lodging for this 3-week orientation. Where is the orientation?
Here at the fire station.
So why is the lodging and per diem different for these 6 proposed new hires than it would be for any other firefighter that we have who's already onboarded?
Well, that's a great,
Do they not do 12-hour shifts like the rest of our guys do? Or 24? Talk about what's the difference.
well, during the 3-week of orientation, that's a 40-hour work week. It's during the day,
Okay,
Monday to Friday, 8 hours. And let me just clarify one quick point. Out of the 6 hires, should we be granted permission, 2 of them are more local. They would not require lodging and meal per diem because they can travel back and forth. Just as a fun fact, and as an aside, one of them is Tommy Wallace, and he's the son of the county sheriff. He's been a volunteer with Ocean Shores Fire now for some time, and he lives locally, and we have someone else who lives locally. So they can go home at night. The other 4 can't. They come from Port Angeles. They come from, near and far. So those people would have to stay somewhere. It's possible they could stay here. I don't recommend it, excuse me, because of fraternization too soon. We want them to be apart from the shifts so that there is no affiliation and then built-in bias. So I don't like that person because they drink a different coffee than me or whatever. So we want to be sure that everything is on an even keel for all of the candidates, particularly because 2 will not be staying here, should we house the other 4 in the fire station. There'd be potentially a conflict, there'd be a difference and a disparity, and that would probably be unfair, probably not favorable to HR.
and then my second, thank you for that. My second question is, I think I heard you say that you were talking about intubating and processes and procedures being different for Ocean Shores than for King County, Seattle. I don't understand. How is it different to intubate somebody in Seattle than it is in Ocean
Well,
Shores?
okay, without focusing on just intubation,
No, I realize that, but
what they're called are standing orders. And because every county has what's the term I'm looking for, Brian? The doc,
Medical program
medical
director.
control.
Mhm.
Medical control is run by a single doctor under a single license for all the paramedics and EMTs in each of the counties. Each of the counties has a set of protocols. The example I used before might not have been the best one with an intubation, but drugs is a great example. We carry particular narcotics in our county, and it's not just Ocean Shores Fire, it's every fire department in this county that runs under Dr. Buck's orders. And she is giving a standing order that you could administer fentanyl, as an example, right? King County doesn't. You have to call, you have to get a hold of the hospital control and get permission to alter from the standing order. Ours are in place to save time, again, because we're a medical desert, time is of the essence. We have long transport times once we get that patient in the rig and start to transport to to one of the local hospitals, the closest being 35, 40 minutes away. But on certain protocols for STEMI and stroke, we have to transport all the way to Olympia. And that's a longer haul and a much longer out of service time for 2 of our 4 paramedics on duty.
So if I
Does
could,
that make sense?
if I could piggyback on that too, Catherine, it really has to do with, and I'm not going to use the term practicing medicine, but I will say our paramedics have to stabilize patients for a way longer period of time than the average inner city medic, right? We don't have a hospital to scoop up somebody and drop them off in 8 minutes. Sometimes we're with our patients for an hour. So if you take intubation, for example, we're going to give the patient a sedative, we're going to give them a paralytic, we're going to intubate them, we're going to put them on a ventilator, and then halfway to the hospital, they start crumping, their vitals start going crazy. That paramedic needs to recognize that, look at the monitor and then implement the right dosage of the next medication. It's kind of taking that next step up from just like a normal inner city medic, which I take nothing away from. There's really great medics out there. But the fact of the matter is we're so far out with people that are so sick. When people move here, a lot of them have a shoebox full of medications. They have congestive heart failure, COPD, diabetes. I mean, it's not just one thing, it's 10 different things. So our paramedics have to be top notch. So we want to specifically spend, and EMTs for that matter, and you know, as firefighters, we have to do a lot more too, because we just don't have the backup coming. So I hope that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And then my
Okay.
last question is in regards to what I think you're going to get the question, what shifts will look like with 6 additional firefighter paramedics on board, and how many people, how many firefighters do you have at this moment?
Okay, right now we have 19.
Okay.
One
And then
of
what
them,
would shifts look like? Is
we
this
would,
gonna mean that you need to open that south station?
well, I wish, we would have basically 8 people per shift with a 6-person minimum. So at a minimum, 6 people would be on shift every day. That doesn't count any volunteer part-timers, which is great. I'm really trying to work on increasing those numbers as well. But what that will do is that will give us the ability to handle 3 911 calls at once, which happens more often than people think. So to answer your question, it'll give us 25 total, and it'll put us at a 6-man minimum with 8 people per shift.
Okay, and then does the fire station, our current fire station, have the capacity to house 6 or 8 people per shift?
Chief Mandela and we've been looking around. We'll be able to do it. It's going to be tight. We have offered a job to another female, which is, you know, par for the course. So we'll have 2 females on the line if things work out, and so we will be able to make it work. We just, as far as the South End station goes, you know, we don't have living quarters down there. So we're not even, I mean, we have to have living quarters down there. We can't just put firemen and lawn chairs down at the South Station and wait for a call. We have to have, you know, living quarters that meet certain code
Right.
in order to put people down there to work. But, you know, that's something that we all know, you know, we need to address and you know, that's for further discussion. I mean, but yes, would it help? Could we put 2 people down there? Sure. If we had the living quarters to do it, we could do it. Yep.
So the question is, you do have the capacity in the current station for all the people to do their 24-hour, whatever, 3-day shifts?
We could make it work, but we are 1 hire away from that not working. Hopefully the next hire we do, we will be closer to a South Station or some sort of living quarters to make that move. That's the goal. That whole South End, you know, we really need to take a hard look at that. It's people's insurance is getting dropped because they don't have the rating they need to you know, for their insurance. But right now we're just trying to meet the goals of our daily staffing, and we're able to do it. Chief Mandela walked around. Chief, do you have anything to say about the living quarters here when you walked around?
We will definitely make it work. as a chief said, it will be tight, but the best line here so far was we're one hire away from that not working. Once we add 6 people. There's a multitude of reasons we need to study really carefully and aggressively doing something into South End. Many reasons for compliance issues, for the insurance issues, and many, many more.
So this 25 people, does that include you, Chief Mandela and Chief Ritter?
No, that just is the line,
Okay, so it's 27 total working in the.
right?
Wow.
And to be honest with you, I counted Kurt Bagley in there. He is still a firefighter EMT, but you know, he's generally here just on days, but he does still respond. Like right now, he's on that wildfire on Ponderosa Loop. But so I did put him in the 19 that we have right now, because he technically is a union employee and does count. So, but he's not here on a 4896 schedule. He's just here during the day.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
And if,
Mike?
so go ahead, Richard.
But my question then, and it's partially answered, if we had living quarters available in the South End Fire Station, how many additional firefighters above the 6 new hires would it take to be able to staff that South End Fire Station, assuming we have living quarters available down there?
12,
Or have you computed those numbers?
no.
Okay, I withdraw the question. It's frivolous at this point, or meaningless at this point.
And the reason I say 12 is 4 per shift. Down there.
Okay. So we would need 12 more than your current staffing,
Exactly.
including these 6 new hires.
Right. If I had it my way to suffice 2 in, 2 out, which is a whack, that means when we get a structure fire, we have to have, when we send 2 people in, we have to have 2 people outside ready to go in to make a imminent rescue. So I would do a minimum of 4 on duty down at the South Station. So that would be to cover 3 shifts. That would be 12.
Thank you.
And if I can, I just want to add one editorial comment for Congresswoman, Congress, I just promoted you.
Hey, I've been promoted and with no need to do anything.
Eric Gilmore's gonna be surprised.
I'm sorry. My editorial comment is this. I worked a long time in King County in the fire service. My wife was an airlift flight nurse based out of King County. And we live here now, and we studied a lot of areas. We knew what we were getting into coming down here, where we had to go so far for a hospital. We made that our choice. But what we also knew, and now I have found out firsthand, is the paramedics and EMTs that work here in Ocean Shores Fire Department are simply the best I've seen. That includes King County, that includes New York City. I cannot, between my wife and I, we talk about this all the time. She's seen so many tragic things coming out to Grays Harbor County on multi-system trauma calls. Totally impressed with how the medics received the helicopter at the landing site. I'm totally impressed with what I see and the protocols that are here and different from King, Pierce, and Snohomish County. You folks that have been running this city for a long time should be very, very proud of yourselves for encouraging the quality of fire service that you have here for your residents.
That's all I got. If anybody has any more questions.
For me,
I don't have any.
No? All right. Well, thank you. The reason we're asking, I guess, is because we have so many good qualified candidates. Because that was the first thing I said was, why are we trying to hire 2 more if we can't fill the positions we have? But we got a really good group of candidates, and that's why it's come to the forefront here. So that's.
And I don't want to wait till January, because those other 2 that are sitting on the list, they'll be gone. I mean, the job market right now is insane. I just want to get them in here and get them going and get everyone going at once if it's feasible, and it looks like it is. And yeah, we'll see what happens. So I appreciate you guys listening.
So Brian, Chief Mandela, my comment on what you just said is I agree with you. If we've got competent, qualified, ready to be on board, let's snatch them up before they go someplace else. And the finances, as Chief Mandela pointed out, the finances still work and we are still well within our budget. So as you present this to council, I invite you to stress selling that point. If we don't get these people on board, the next crop may not be as imminently qualified.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, we've already lost a couple, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we did. There's just a lot of competition out there, and the way I sold the department when we went out and did our PR was, you know, help us create the fire department you've always wanted to work for. And it's really good right now. I think Chief Mandela and I are, you know, think good things are happening, and these potential candidates are just waiting to hear whether or not we're going to be able to bring them on. There was no start dates or anything like that. They're going through processes, but everyone's kind of waiting on bated breath. So hopefully we can get this done.
All
I
right.
have a question for Angie.
Okay.
At the beginning of the meeting, the first topic was financial update, and we went right to the golf course update. Do you have a financial update?
The update was that we should have the financials done by the end of the week, because Shantae's been out, I've been in negotiations,
okay.
so they're not ready yet. So that was
Okay,
kind of the update, is we don't have them today, but we should have them within the next few days.
okay, and that's for June.
June, yep.
Okay, okay. And there was nothing else on, just the three topics?
Well, I think, Scott doesn't have a report, but I do believe the mayor does.
Ah,
Conclude with him.
Yeah, it's really short. I think we covered all the big highlight obviously was the golf course and getting the financial information out there. And I wrote a lot of notes that you had on Catherine, you know, for us to get there, because I think it's important, because I know Rich and I, that looking at the P&L is different than how Angie looks at the city finances. And really,
Right.
the city finances is just moving that money over there. So we start building up there, but have the understanding we're in the best part of the season, and then we're going to go in January. We may need to have put money back in with it. But I think it's important for the council to understand what the process is, so they can track where the money comes from and where it's going with
right.
it. So we'll put our heads together and get that, and do some type of a presentation of a Troon Golf Course 101 finance something type of thing.
I think that would help not only council, but the public as well. And with interest of transparency would be very helpful for us all to understand a little bit more about the finances.
Yeah, and so we're working on that, and I know that Shantae that has done a great job of transitioning into her position, and my vision is that she's going to do more and more of the presentation of exactly the monthly stuff as it gets up to speed, and do some more in-depth looking at the details of exactly how do we compare to other cities, and do some more benchmarking, because sometimes that we look at numbers and we go, our numbers look high, then we go and look at elsewhere and we're looking okay, or vice versa. So so I'm excited to, since Shantae's pretty much all caught up on the finance piece of it, that we can go to the next level. Couple things that are coming up that we're probably right now, I've got my staff, the finance are looking at it, is to take a look at some of our permit fees that we have, as well as our license fees. There's some things that we're still trying to get clarification on what we need to do. And a good example is license fees for Uber in Ocean Shores. Apparently they have there's a state law that's a little bit different than what our taxi law is. And my personal feeling is that we should be consistent. That if you've got a local taxi service and an Uber service, that at least from a taxing point of view, that we're consistent on that. So we're working on bringing something like that forward, as well as looking at making sure everyone that's doing business in Ocean Shores actually has a license to do business. We've had an issue with people that are, and in a way, it's not their fault, but they have a license to do business in the state of Washington. They just do not have a City of Ocean Shores endorsement, which is, I think Angie, it's $40 for a city endorsement.
50.
Oh, $50. Okay, $50. But the bigger issue is that if you don't have an endorsement in the City of Ocean Shores, you're paying taxes, but the taxes don't go to our city. That we're working on trying to make sure that we have everybody paying the taxes they should pay. Richard?
So, John, I thought that was a question that was addressed about 3 council meetings ago. And I thought I heard you or somebody say that you are looking for a way to make sure that loophole was closed. And what I think I'm hearing is that although you're looking at it, the loophole's not closed yet.
Yeah, we did the very easy thing to do, is that the businesses that we were looking at were businesses that were actually paying B&O taxes for us. So they were paying city taxes. They just weren't signed up for the state. So from a sales tax point of view with it. So those were real easy. What we don't have is if I have a license to do business in the state of Washington, and I don't have a license in the City of Ocean Shores, we really don't know, and they're not filing a B&O tax. We do not actually know if they're legal unless we track them down. So a good example, one of the things that we're working on are when there is somebody that's building a house in Ocean Shores, to make sure that they have a license, and that license is not only the state of Washington, but the city. In the first run, we wouldn't have that number, because if we don't have a B&O being filed, we didn't have the taxes. Am I making that clear?
Almost. I'm trying to visualize, and maybe this is too deep, and you can tell me so, too deep in the weeds, but what are the machinations? What's the process to be able to identify those with a state license but not a city license? In my visualization, I could put up 2 spreadsheets and just compare them. It
No,
must be more complicated than that.
It's more complicated than that, because we don't have a record of them. And I'll use an example of someone comes in and clears a lot, and they're from Olympia. If we don't actually have someone that actually stops by and asks them what their business is, and we don't go back and track whether or not they're on our record, then we don't have any record of them. So the first part, if they file a B&O tax, I know who they are, because they file a B&O tax, and then we can just go to the state documents and we can cross-reference those. So those are real easy, and all those are really just people that just didn't click the right box. So those were really easy ones. But what is more difficult, and that's where we get the phone calls from people that say, hey, I've got somebody here, I don't think they don't have a license, and we can look it up. And that's where code enforcement comes in line.
So when I was a business person in Washington, and for a brief while in Ocean Shores, that my B&O liability was so small that I didn't have to pay B&O tax, but I still had to file. And so in my mind, there's a disconnect that I'm not visualizing, and I don't want to
So
take your
use that
time.
same example, Richard, and then say that you just didn't file your B&O tax. You just took that piece of paper and you threw it away. You didn't do it. So how would the city know that you actually existed?
That's true, but the state knows that I did, because the state knows I have a license, and the state knows that I did not file the B&O, and it would seem that they then should be able to track that pretty easy.
Right, but how does the state know? Because for instance, I ship liquor throughout the state of Washington. I have to put on my shipping exactly where did I ship it to, and I pay that tax rate for wherever I'm shipping it to. Same thing with Amazon. Amazon ships to this Ocean Shores. They pay sales tax to us because they have a record. But if you're an individual, just like what you said, and you're providing services, you may have a state license, but if we don't verify that you have a city license, then we do not get any of those taxes.
Yeah, so what triggers, Richard, this might help you too, is the state doesn't handle B&O. They only do the business licensing part. So in order for a business to be sent a B&O form each quarter, they have to have an active City of Ocean Shores endorsement through the state. So those are easy, like the mayor was saying. Fortunately, the contractors, the permit department's really good about checking with us to make sure that they have active endorsements before they'll sign off on permits. So that's good. We get calls all the time from Nettie asking that question. The hard part is the state has resources where you can pull, like, these businesses have a state business license, and it's easy to show, like, if an address is in Ocean Shores, we can say that business clearly has a state business license. They're in Ocean Shores, but they don't have an Ocean Shores endorsement. The hard part is trying to find the businesses outside of Ocean Shores, because we really don't have a list. So she's been working really hard. A lot of it has just been word of mouth throughout the community that comes back and like, hey, these guys don't have a business license, and we start tracking them down. Or we had quite a few when the state started doing the business licensing. They didn't get the annual city renewal for the business license, so they just stopped renewing. So we've cleaned all those up. So it's just been a cleanup process since Melissa's taken over business licensing, using all the tools that she has available through the state and our local community. But she's been working really hard on getting it cleaned up, and we've done quite a bit. So it's good.
So the bottom line, you've clearly identified the problem and you have a plan in place to rectify the problem. And the finance department, in my mind, is pretty skookum. And so I don't need to necessarily know the details. It's not particularly in my wheelhouse, except to know that you guys recognize and are actively addressing the issue.
Yeah,
And I think that's a statement.
we're even looking into a system that, because business licensing touches like 5 different city departments. So we're looking at a system to make that more efficient, I would say, across the board.
Okay.
Because right now it's just like, if one approves it and you got to send an email saying this is ready for you. So it's kind of clunky. So we have a meeting at the end of the month to talk about maybe a new process for that. But I think since I've been here, this is the most I've seen the group that we have that touch these business licenses work together to come up with plans to get things cleaned up. Because there hasn't been a lot of enforcement over the years, which I know code enforcement is working really hard on. We've been sending businesses like, you got to get licensed or we're going to, you got to stop operating. So we've taken it very seriously. And I think, word's getting out that we are enforcing it now, and it's coming around. So it's good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's all that I have.
I
He's
forgot
in
what the
my office
question
at
was.
least, I don't know, 5 to 10 times a day talking about business licensing.
Yes, I do, because I get those emails and I somewhat, and I'll tell you that I do get frustrated because I have businesses that it's only $50 to do it, and code enforcement has to continue to show them and ticket them for not getting it. And it's like, in my mind, just get the license.
Yeah, it's way easier that way for
Yeah.
everybody.
So I have one final question, not related to finance. I would like to talk to either Scott or you, John, regarding a relatively recent email. And I just want to understand what's going on. Can I call either of you, and which one was the best one to call?
Probably best one to call is Scott. I've got a meeting at 2.
So Scott, as soon as we hang up, I'm going to call you.